for whatever reason, they decide, hey, this portion up here is not that important for drainage to us. However, there's 20 additional GPS sites south of the location that are more important.
They can't just go out and pick that up. They will have to come back to FEMA and ask for FEMA to take a look at that.
Okay, and that's
But they don't have the authority to go and do
exactly.
That's what I was going to say.
I've got a lot of experience with debris and disaster-related cleanup, and I've seen firsthand a lot of times I'll assign a monitor, and I know you guys have got a tremendous task in front of you trying to get this done. So this is not a job for you guys at all. But a lot of times the monitors that we're seeing out here, I mean, they're literally, they could have been somebody, you know, that was unemployed yesterday that has no background doing this. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Is that who you're relying on to ask that person, is this eligible? Is this really what's out here?
Not a debris monitor. There would always be somebody that would be above that. Jeffrey, you want to speak to that a little bit?
As far as the monitors are concerned, all of our monitors are trained as to what we consider eligible and ineligible work. There's also, FEMA will also fund for the applicants or the sub-grantees, there's a provision where he can hire his own monitor. That the applicant hires his own monitors. Those monitors, the applicant is charged with having those people trained to understand what's eligible and not eligible. So there are situations when FEMA and GOSEP, we're not there every moment of every day. The applicant is charged with also being responsible for removing only eligible debris. So every sub-grantee has monitors. His monitors are supposed to be the guys who direct the contractor. FEMA, no GOSEP will not and do not direct the contractor. So FEMA's not going to tell him, pick this up and not pick
Right,
that
I
up.
understand that.
The applicant's monitor will do that. Because again, FEMA, there's no direct line between the contractor, subcontractor,
So
and
what,
FEMA.
what type of training does that individual have to receive prior to being able to go out into the field and give guidance to the contractor?
You mean the applicant's monitor?
Well, yes, the applicant monitor, and then I would also like to know what your guys' monitor.
The FEMA, all the FEMA monitors that work for us went through our training whereby we went in and we pulled out our 325, our policies and guidelines as to what's eligible, what's not eligible, and they're all trained on that before they went out. I know because I trained most of them.
And if they have a question, they're going to come back and ask that. But let me just, for clarification, so you understand this going forward, after Katrina, Rita, and I think that was when the policy changed, FEMA does not provide monitors now. That is not, that is up to the sub-grantee to take care of getting a monitor firm and do that. We do not do any
And are there guidelines already in place that says these are monitors shall be trained in ABC or, 40-hour training? Yes?
Well, I don't know if there's a specific guideline as to the hours and the specifics of the trained. However, FEMA does make it clear that the applicant's monitors ought to be trained and knowledgeable about FEMA policies and guidelines.
Okay, but there's nothing from a FEMA level. And I'm just trying to understand, so when I go back and I talk to the congressman on this, I can say, hey, this may be an area that going forward, we can improve on. I am one of the tiered subs. If you rely on somebody to go back to FEMA and say, or submit a report to FEMA to say, yes, this is eligible, and no, this is not eligible, that person should, in my opinion, I think, needs to have some sort of a qualification or some type of training rather than just, like I said, somebody maybe that's been plucked off the street yesterday that's never done that type of work before.
We agree with that. I mean, as part of the procurement process, the monitors are required to have trained people. They're supposed to understand FEMA's policies and guidelines.
But there's no, that's what I'm saying, there's no formal action. That, for example, if I'm a monitor contractor, and I just say, yeah, my guys are
But again, understand your guys work for the applicant, they don't work for FEMA.
correct. I understand that, but it's federal money that's coming down, is paying for that ultimately.
Ultimately, yes. But
And I think
A question.
But wait, I think, let me just clarify one thing as well, and Jeffrey, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they're really not making that eligibility decision.
In quantities, right?
Yes, in quantities, they're gonna make, yeah.
the biggest job is documentation.
Documentation.
And doing having the load tickets put together, that stuff.
I was just, thank you.
Because and especially when you're concerned with waterways, because there's so much to be able to suspect. And there are times when you go and grab a tree and it looks like it's 10 cubic yards and it's a 40-foot tree on the ground. enough to be hooked to it, and that type of thing. So one of the things that they do, and I think part of that was the problem with this project, is that we went out and made estimates that this much debris. You go do waterway debris, there's a ton of self-service that you couldn't see.
Yeah.
So in those cases, generally speaking, you would add that to the project. That's why they're done on estimates. So the estimated quantity initial was purely an estimate. The applicant knew it was an estimate. The contractor should have known it was an estimate, but again, FEMA doesn't speak to the contractor. That's between, the means and methods are all up to the subgrantee. We kind of review, so they go out, they pick up the debris, they come back to FEMA and they say, look, based on this documentation, this is what we think is eligible. What do you think about this? There are times that FEMA will say, okay, yeah, you were right, we didn't see that. That appears to be eligible, so we'll fund it. Other cases will say, no, that does not appear to be eligible, we won't fund it. But again, we're not there every moment of every day. And there are times when debris is picked up, the applicant's monitor brings that forth to FEMA and asks us our opinion on it, and then we make the ultimate eligibility determination.
Can I ask a question, y'all?
Yes, sir.
Sure, you've been trying for a while.
And so, thank y'all so much for, not getting it to everybody's body language, but I just want to just ask, I guess, a couple of questions, or just think, what you're saying, though, is the leadership in Calcasieu Parish would have to approach you to amend the PW, and if they do that, then you do have the authority to look at it again?
Yes, but that would be extremely difficult, because.
I know, I just want to see.
But I'm saying, at this point, understand, at this point, Calcasieu Drainage District number 8 has been paid for all of the eligible work. So we can't pay for work that may have been done, that should have been done, or anything else. So if the applicant has been paid for all eligible work at a reasonable cost,
There's nothing left
we're
for
done.
us. Yeah.
There's nothing to pay for.
And that's.
OSAP monitor. So the point is, Mark DeBosier made it clear, there's what was originally eligible, there's what was potentially eligible, and then there's what they reported to us that was eligible. So I hope that I can finish by showing where the work was done. FEMA's gonna, I believe, already agreed that they can only reimburse within the Army Corps of Engineers wetland permit. So I'm gonna show them what the Army Corps of Engineers produced in affidavit and what their permit covered.
Is that
And
a
we're
true
gonna-
statement, or did I misspeak?
And we're gonna show them on the map of where the work was done, and we're gonna compare the two and find out where the disconnect is. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to that in just a moment.
As far as the Army Corps is concerned, and working where they say we can work, whenever there's work done in streams or creeks or anything like that, the Army Corps goes in and does their assessment. They tell us, I don't say to direct us, but there's certain things criteria that they need to work by. They list those criteria to us, and they tell us what they want and how things can. Like before, they said they would just let it put it on the side of the creek and let it decay. The Army Corps says in this particular creek, for whatever reason, you can't do that. They don't actually tell us why it can't be done, but they say do it this way, do it that way, right? As far as the project goes, FEMA moves forward and completes the project. FEMA can perform a project without the Army Corps' approval. What happens is that the Army Corps comes back and reviews, if it's done before them or after, they review the work. They then have an assessment with that. If the Army Corps would have had a problem with what was done, then the Army Corps would have come back and said to us, that was not done correctly. And again, that does not mean that FEMA that FEMA won't pay for it. What that means that the Army Corps has all types of ways to remedy situations. Sometimes they can say, what they did was so far wrong, we are gonna request that FEMA does not fund that as another federal agency. Other times they'll say, well, what they did wasn't so bad, in 2 years the grass, say they're gonna cut the grass, they take too much grass, they'll say, well, in this area the grass will grow back in a year, so it's okay. Or there's any number of remedies or remediations that the Army Corps can do or won't do to come to a solution. So it's actually not true that work can't be done without their permission, because the work can be done. The Army Corps just will come back and put their part of it in there. And again, you can do it, and they come back and remediate it in some other way. So that's I don't know the word.
It's not an eligibility determination.
Exactly.
Right.
There's an end to this project and a beginning. So according to you, they could have just went 2 miles south and removed debris on this project, and that was still within the FEMA PW.
If the applicant came forward to FEMA and said, FEMA, we have some additional things we would like you guys to look at, and FEMA went out and looked at it and determined that they were eligible, yes.
I think that's what we need to ask for. I'd ask Ed Higgins and Senator Miller. Maybe we ask them, where did FEMA go? I'm gonna ask this gentleman here. He was the monitor, that's where they did the work. It was 2 miles, all the way to the mouth of the bridge, which I can provide you a picture of here's the picture from the newspaper.
Yeah, and again, Mr. Broussard, as far as FEMA's concerned, and we pay for the debris removal from those sites,
How do you know that?
because that's the documentation, the documentation that we received from the applicant in the time that we were there.
When were you there? I'm asking, because I want to prove to everyone that FEMA came out there originally and
Right.
they never came back.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with that.
Okay, well then I would ask if y'all would provide that y'all went back out, went back on the bike and approved anything that was additional. I know you said this is how it's supposed to be done. I'm talking. If FEMA could provide the
Bill, I need to
documents,
cut
I
you
don't believe
off.
it ever happened.
Billy, I need to cut. And I'll say this again, this happens with debris all the time. And again, this is why there's no relationship between FEMA and the contractor. There's work all the time where the sub-grantee says to his contractor, pick up this and this and this and this and this, right? So that contractor's responsibility to his owner is to pick up what he said to pick up. Of those 5 things, 2 may be eligible. So FEMA may be easily only paying for those 2. So my only point is, just because that contractor picked up that particular amount of debris, that does not mean that it was FEMA funded. It just doesn't. Now, you know, how the contract and the owner worked, and how you paid him for what he did, and how he decided what to pay him, how he pulled out what he pulled out, and all the rest of those things. And again, I'm not running from it. It's not a FEMA issue. That's between the contractor
Yes.
and the owner of his contract.
And we disallow funding all
So
the
that
time.
happens all the time,
We
so
disallow work.
you may think that all these things were funded by FEMA or paid for by FEMA, and it just weren't.
I was
And that's
going
what-
based off of what GOSAP produced to me of the documents that were produced for reimbursement. That's where I got the
But again, the documents that they gave you, you don't know what portion, I mean, like for example, there was 700 yards picked up. Maybe only 500 of those were being funded. You don't know what's being funded and what's not being
But
funded.
that's also
Again, that's between you and him.
Yes.
That's between you and the owner of
But
the
the
contract.
problem is, if the
You try to
FEMA guy just from his house says, hey guys, you know what, I'm just gonna say it's all, I mean, really, FEMA has to make the determination if it's eligible or not. And I think if we get to the bottom of on this project,
that's
where did
absolutely true,
FEMA,
but that's
when
not-
did FEMA, how did FEMA, if, y'all said they would have to send their assessment team out there to approve this additional eligible debris. I would like to see
If we
that.
didn't have enough to be able to do it by looking at the documents.
I mean, they can take,
And again,
they
I'm
can send
not-
us pictures, they can have conversations, there's all kinds of ways for us to help determine the eligibility.
Yeah.
But again, you know, you're asking for things that are between FEMA and applicant and the contractor. There's no straight line, and you seem to, like you want a straight line to that.
Well, there needs to
But
be
that
a
line
communication.
stops. We
But
don't
we
have the
don't
communication with you.
communicate with the contractors.
Yeah, that's
ever.
not it.
With-
Because again, that applicant can tell you to do all kinds of stuff. You work for him. You do not work for GOSEP. You do not work for FEMA. And FEMA, no, GOSEP can give means and methods to do work or direct work into that stuff. And you want FEMA and GOSEP to be responsible for the relationship between you and the owner of the contract. And
Because GOSAP's
we do
monitor
not.
was the one ordering and directing the work, especially to a
No,
big portion of the.
That's between
They
you.
weren't.
Yes, they were, that's what,
But
her home, that's what
well,
it was
Mr.
called.
Russo, if in fact you did that, that's an issue between you and the owner of your contract. that's between, I mean, I don't know, I don't know a nice way to say it, but,
And I stood up for local money being stolen, that's federal money being stolen.
well,
Okay, if that's the boundaries, it went way past that boundary.
the only thing that I can answer
Way
the question
past
is why not clean the whole thing in these spots? The
Well,
way
no, the
it works
lower end is
that-
good, but the lower end, it's missing the tail about that long.
is that the applicant comes to FEMA, many times through GOSAP, put together, and they say, we have problems here. FEMA did not go out and look for the problem. The applicant came to FEMA and GOSAP, and they walked this with us, and said, look at this one, what about that one? What about that one? What about that one? So, what happened in these assessments was that the applicant brought us to these sites and said that this looks like a blockage, this looks like a blockage, that looks like a blockage.
Right.
And FEMA determined, well, yeah, that actually does look like that was caused by the event. And said yes, and then for some and no for some. So the reason that the specific sites was that those specific sites were asked for. So,
Okay.
so there may have been a site here and a site here and a site here that we said no to.
Because that
But
brings.
they had me pick it up. If they said no to those sites, they still had me pick them up because we.
Right.
Right, that's right.
Value.
And
that's-
And again, you may have picked those up, because I don't mean to say you may have picked them up. If you said you picked them up, I have no reason not to believe you.
now,
My only,
That doesn't mean they're all
yeah,
eligible.
right, my comments to you is that does not mean, number one, that they were eligible, and number two, that does not mean that FEMA actually funded it. You know, there's a lot of times, there's a lot of situations where, and again, that's a reason why there's a barrier between FEMA and the contractor, because you work for the applicant. The applicant can say, I mean, there are actually cases where the applicant has two different payrolls where he has his funding source directly, and there's a FEMA funding source. Sometimes there's even a state funding source.
And there have been